Greetings! In today's video, I am going to break down the dropship that I showed in the last one. Dropship or gunship, it doesn't have a name yet, so I don't really know. However, let's get started. I have divided the video into sections in order to categorize the particularities of this build. The first section is going to talk about the paneling. What kinds of blocks that I use and where. And this is very simple to explain, but very difficult to actually do. This is the large paneling, essentially in red the 4x8 pieces, in green the 2x4 pieces, and that's pretty much it. The rest is all small details. I don't believe there are any other large blocks on the entire thing, other than the hoverpads, which admittedly do fill up a large part of the interior, and these large jets that allow for thrust. So essentially, the main structure of the build is made mostly out of all of the green pieces, the 2x4 blocks, with 4x8 blocks filling in some of the gaps, especially at the bottom. The second section will be regarding the use of hoverpads and generally how this creation lifts itself. As is visible, these are all of the hoverpads inside the creation. Starting from the front, these two are steering hoverpads. They mirror the ones in the back over here, and these 4 hoverpads are used essentially for yawing left and right. Then we have the main lift hoverpads. There's 3 of them inside the body in the center of the wings, and there's 2 of them at the end of the tail. These are providing the primary lift for the center of the vehicle. Then we move outwards to the wings, where most of the steering happens, as these hover blocks on the inside of the wings steer for the pitch, and the ones on the inside of the tail as well. The hover blocks at the tips of the tail and the wings are controlling the roll of the vehicle. The last hover pads to note are these 4 within the fuselage. They are UFO engines, so steering hinges push wedges into the hover pads in order to create forward propulsion. In evidence now is the distance sensor painted in white at the top of the vehicle. It gives all of the hinges the necessary input to create shapes and angles that aren't possible using normal blocks. The primary outputs are to the large hinges attached to the wings that fold them upward by 7 degrees, outputs to the large hinges attached to the front of the fuselage to angle the entire cockpit downwards by 10 degrees, and the large hinges at the back of the fuselage connected to the tail to angle it backwards by 15 degrees. Other hinges are used to tuck the landing gear away when the vehicle is lifted off the ground, and these hinges are controlled by the distance sensor at the bottom, which detects the ground whenever you come in for a landing. The last hinges to note are the ones that open the cockpit, folding it forward by 75 degrees so that the player can jump out of his vehicle. In evidence at the top is now all of the logic used to steer the aircraft. The backmost logic gate in purple has Q as an input, and it deactivates a large amount of the lifting hover pads so that the vehicle can descend slowly and land without braking. The angle sensors are hooked into the hover blocks at the tips of the wings, and they are programmed so that the vehicle will constantly attempt to remain upright if left alone. These 2 logic gates hold outputs A and D, and they both give an output to this OR gate, so that when either of them or both of them are activated, the OR gate can output. The OR gate activates 2 AND gates. when an AND gate receives the output from an OR gate, which means that the player is steering, and at the same time receives the output from the angle sensor, the AND gate will reactivate the hover blocks that the angle sensor had deactivated, counteracting the stabilization. The result of this is that whenever there is no input, the stabilizer will keep the aircraft upright. However, anytime I want to steer, the aircraft will tilt in the direction of the steering, and then subsequently correct itself as soon as I let go of the command. The final section of this dissection is the decaling. It's not particularly complex. It mostly exists to create a dynamic outline for the eye to catch onto while looking at the creation. So there are decals highlighting the air intake, and from the back of the fuselage, following the pattern of the large hinges painted in white, the decal runs forward across the entirety of the body to connect up with the one coming off from the front and from the cockpit. On the cockpit, there's decals coming across the top and the side, so that a person looking from the outside doesn't simply see large empty glass space and can actually infer that there's a shape in front. And there you go. That has been my brief breakdown and dissection of the thought process behind that flying vehicle that I built. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the future.